Ted Cohen is an old friend and a great friend of the industry. He's the owner of Tag Strategic in Los Angeles, and Ted's always very involved in the digital summits, as I mentioned, a couple of which I've been to in the past 6 months or so. And he's got a great panel today on the concept of the computer becoming the television, becoming the television, becoming the computer, the ubiquity of information in the household. He's joined by one of the smartest guys that I've ever met, Eric Albert, our Executive Vice President at Stingray. He paid me an extra $50 to say that. Please welcome Ted Cohen, and he'll introduce his panel.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you? It's interactive. Are we having a good day? Thank you. Okay. My panel is coming up here. Try and sit. Well, you don't have to sit by your picture, but it's okay. This is an interesting topic. For those of you who've been at a panel that I'm involved in before, here's the rules. You're sitting here because this is something you're interested in. If we don't hit the topic you're talking about or the issue you'd hope we'd talk about, there are mics out here. Go to the mic. Don't wait till the end. We're not going to do questions at the end. We've got some really smart people up here. The topic is really interesting. You guys are all very bright. You shouldn't walk out of the room saying, they never talked about what I thought they were going to talk about. If we're not hitting what you were hoping to learn about, grab a mic, ask a question. If we start talking in shorthand, call us on it and say, wait, I didn't get that. What is what's an RFID chip? What's a whatever? So with that said, I'd like each panelist to take a moment and introduce themselves briefly and talk about what's the last new show you watched and what did you like about it? How's that?
Oh, okay. My name is Richard Fawal. I'm the founder of WatchParty.tv, a social television interaction application. The last show that I watched Have you seen Awake? Have you seen Missing? Have you seen... I haven't. Okay.
What's your last social TV experience? Well, tell me an app that you like that you didn't create. What's out there that you think is cool?
I like what Miso's doing in the social television space.
Mm-hmm.
I play a lot of games on my iPad.
Okay.
So that's what I use my iPad for, is playing games. So I've been playing Blockus a lot on the iPad.
Okay. Eric?
Eric Albert, I'm Executive Vice President at Stingray Digital. You might not be familiar with Stingray, but you might be familiar with some of our services: Galaxie Digital Music, Karaoke Channel, Concert TV, Galaxie Music Videos. Our services are available through cable operators. We're a B2B service provider. We're in about 70 million households now in about 48 countries around the world. Last show, I must say my wife makes me watch Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
Hi there. My name is Michael Papish. I work for Rovi. Before that, I ran a startup called Media Unbound that worked on recommendation technology. And at Rovi, we're very focused on sort of discovery, helping people find new and interesting television shows. And I run a lab that works on that kind of technology. However, the last show that I watched, I tend to watch shows that are about 6 to 7 years off the air. That way no one can spoil them for me. And I'm currently rewatching Battlestar Galactica the second time because my wife is now watching it. So it's only like a 70-hour commitment. It's going great.
Very cool.
I'm Glenn Purkis, product manager for Xbox Live in Canada. I manage the marketing and promotion of the service to our members, as well as driving Xbox at retail. And certainly a lot of the programs and engagement on our dashboard, and also identifying content partners to work with in Canada for our Canadian members in particular. For me, for TV, was actually finally discovering Breaking Bad on Netflix for the first time. So kind of that wow moment. An amazing series I just hadn't been following.
I'm only in season 2, so don't ruin it, please.
What is the spoiler? I'm Ted Cohen. I run a company called Tag Strategic. We do digital consulting for entertainment companies. And my last show that I really like, there's a new show called Awake. I don't know if anybody's seen that. And Missing with Ashley Judd. If you want escapism television, they're both very good. So it came from CES a few months ago in Las Vegas, and we were talking before the panel. There's a lot of toys out there that give you a connected experience, whether it's the connected set, whether it's a second screen or a third screen experience. any of you first. I think, Michael, you're probably the most opinionated up here. What is for you, what is the optimum social experience right now? Is it a second screen experience? Is it a checking your iPhone? Is it overlaying a Bloomberg experience across a basketball game? What do you think works?
So I'm gonna back up, I guess, and say we're in a phase of experimentation. I don't think anyone knows yet what consumers want to do with connected televisions and how they want to use them. One thing I am sure of, though, is that the idea of social television is not new, right? It's not like the internet came along and all of a sudden that meant, oh, we need to have a social experience. Culture, which includes things like television and music and radio, has always been social, right? We learn about it from the people we talk to. And so the internet is not new, connected televisions are not new. Maybe they amplify some of these behaviors, but it's not like that we're fundamentally changing the way that humans interact with something like television. And I think the more that we remember that, the better we'll do. And we start doing crazy things that don't make any sense, experiences that consumers, are sort of strange or foreign to, that's where we're gonna get in trouble. So, that's,
give an example of going off the rails.
I mean, putting Facebook on a television, I think, is strange. I don't think that the average consumer wants to necessarily have their personal Facebook feed on a large television in front of a group, and I also don't think that environment makes any sense for that kind of interaction. So that's one example. So, we do lots of meetings with large CE companies and say, we need the Facebook on the television, and it's like, what are you talking about? How are you going to do that? Like, how will someone actually use something like a Facebook experience on a TV? I don't think anyone has any idea what that means.
Eric?
Completely agree. I think the most important thing that we have to remember is content is still king. And the reason why people watch a TV show or a sporting event or whatever it is because they want to watch the TV show itself. Whatever we do in terms of social has to be a companion to that. It's not meant to replace it. So if we go with the premise that we're going to build a social thing and then build content around it, I think that's the wrong premise. I also think that a lot of stuff that we're seeing today is improvised. Good example, I missed the Super Bowl this year because I was on a flight going out to Calgary. By the time I touched down, when I logged into Facebook and I logged into Twitter and stuff like that, I knew almost play by play what the game was. I had reviews of the halftime show and everything else. That wasn't done by the NFL. It wasn't done, it wasn't something that was planned, but it's something that people actually just did by themselves. So it's almost improvised at this point.
Xbox is a very interactive medium. You're now doing a lot with television. How are you seeing the implementation?
Well, I was going to speak on the Facebook. Facebook actually has an app on Xbox. When you look at, let's say, a top 20 ranker of the video games and actually social and entertainment, it's actually up in that top 20. And there's an element, again, it's that 10-foot, versus 10-inch experience. And it's getting my photos. Being able to share in that moment with your family in a comfortable living room on the best television screen. I think that's where it's relative. So there's an element of, am I going to sit here and chat and text chat? I think those are some of the challenges, but certainly being able to engage with content that's relevant for the experience as part of that social TV experience, we're definitely seeing that today.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, when I say Facebook on the TV doesn't make sense, I mean, I don't want to have the Facebook website on my television. And I think a lot of people, when they think of Facebook on TV, that's exactly what they want to build, and they try to build that, and it fails every time. The example of sharing photos, that's a use case that's perfect for the living room.
Okay.
So, Richard, you built a social app. You want to talk a bit about?
Sure. We launched Watch Party as a chat room for television shows about a year ago. We had great user growth up to a point, and then we sort of peaked and plateaued for a while. And when we started to try to understand what was happening, we realized that the people who were using our chat room for television were people who were using chat rooms anyway. And that when we brought people in who weren't used to chat rooms or didn't use a lot of chat rooms, they would participate. They would maybe participate for one season of a show or for a few episodes. But the problem that they were encountering that we had not solved for them was an interface problem, an interaction problem. Typing comments and trying to have chat-style conversations while they were focused on a television. And, of course, television is unique. It requires visual and mental attention in order to follow along, that a lot of people were having trouble. Chatting with other people in the room, either on a laptop or on a tablet, typing, and then looking up to see what had happened, and then looking back down to type, and it just wasn't working for folks. So we're now re-examining the whole interface problem that we think is the fundamental problem with television, social television and interactive television.
So talk about the interface problem. So that's a bit of learning.
Yeah.
That's a hard lesson.
It's a very hard lesson, but it's an important one because television is unique. It's not watching video on a computer screen where the chat is on the side of what you're watching and it's all in the same interface. The nature of television is, as you said, it's content. The content is king, and what you're watching matters, and whatever social experience you're having while you're watching can't detract from that, and it has to.
Well, that's the thing, and people keep talking about we're creating a more immersive experience. Is it truly more immersive, or is it distraction?
That's an excellent question. I think in a lot of cases, what a lot of folks are doing in this space is distracting, or it's social television in the sense that it's social media, so the social web with television as its topic, but it's not synchronous social experience. And that's really the key here. I think what we're talking about is how do you make it synchronous so that people are interacting at a moment in time while they're watching a show, and finding a way for people to be able to express themselves, react, and interact with other people with the least amount of effort and distraction, perhaps through things like Connect and gesture-based stuff, or more active avatars. That's the problem that everybody, I think, is ultimately going to have to try to solve, and whoever solves it, I think, will end up really dominating the space.
Yeah. And so the synchronicity question is really interesting, and that might be one reason why certain genres seem to be better suited than others, or at least are more popular, like sports is a good example, right? There's something about watching sports live that's extremely important to the viewer. You want to see it when it happens.
And that's more social.
And that's
much more social.
And it's social to begin with, right? I mean, the reason why many of us are excited by sports is that it's sort of a shared cultural moment that we're in. So I think, we've even seen, before the rise of sort of these newfangled and easier to use interfaces, we see really old interfaces that people still use. I mean, I'm from the Boston area. We love our baseball in Boston. And there's a community that uses an old bulletin board system, and there's like several thousand people on every baseball game posting on this horrible, horrible interface, but they do it every single game. So, even though the interface is bad, the users are so excited they do it anyways.
We were talking earlier about that notion about it has to be relative. So sports, continuing with that, on Xbox Live, with the integration of Connect, you want that kind of sit back, I'm relaxed, I'm engaged with the sport. I want to be in a social network, I'm on live. I could actually be logged into live and chatting with friends freely with the open mic in my living room. And it's that trash talk environment. So that's where you're having fun, you're with your buddies, you're online, you're watching sports. And you were saying earlier that just doesn't resonate with someone watching a drama where there's a wow moment. Maybe someone wants to kind of have that level of excitement, but still, maybe having an open mic doesn't fit that scenario.
It's harder to have that experience watching Awake or watching, for the person who tweeted, The West Wing, which I am a fan of because I live in Washington, D.C. But that's not the same. Sports and drama and comedy are totally different experiences.
Right, it's genre specific. We used to have what we still would call water cooler moments.
Sure.
Prior to the advent of the DVR, and even going back to VCRs, it used to be water cooler moments where you would talk about something, but now with time shifting, people they're a little more diffused in terms of, did you see Grey's Anatomy last night? Right. And you might not have seen Grey's Anatomy because you DVR'd it and you're going to watch it Saturday afternoon when you wake up late, whatever. So, but you have moments like whether it's the Super Bowl or it's a major hockey game or whatever it happens to be. Those are the things that people are usually synchronous watching the Stanley Cup final or
Sports
something.
Is much more like that.
So how do we maximize those experiences, and then what do we do to make drama, comedy, whatever, immersive without it being distracting? I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge that I see, is that most of what you would consider immersion, I get criticized for ADD behavior because I'm pulling out the iPad, I'm texting something, something's popping up on the screen, and everybody around me is going, can you just watch the show?
Well, there's that notion again, how could my representation in the social TV experience, my avatar, so is it capturing my expressions? There's an example for Sky Television on Xbox in the UK, and they've integrated so that you could be watching a video, actually live sports. You can have full screen. You're logged into the experience simultaneously with up to 8 friends. You can be freely talking to each other, but you can actually squeeze back the video and see avatars. So you're seeing that visual representation of you in that social environment. And in fact, you can then press a button, like something on the controller or a gesture, and it actually picks that up. So my level of excitement could be a little, so it's not totally intrusive. It's not taking me away from the experience, and the technology is capturing my experience and then sharing it in that social environment.
Very cool. You have a question?
Is the mic on?
Yes, it is.
Philip Terlecki from Unext, YOUNXT. Just had a question with regards to your opinion on what award shows are doing, because they're notoriously boring to watch. But I wanted to bring up 2 examples. This year's Academy Awards, what they did was you had your TV component that ABC, bought for like $1 billion or whatever, and then online they would have 6 cameras in 6 different places, so you could see behind the scenes, you could see, the actual statues being engraved, and you got this whole sort of different perspective on the Academy Awards, and I thought that was really interesting. And also for the Academy Awards, and I think for the Globes as well, a huge sort of Twitter following obviously developed around the fashion of these award shows, and you had this whole sort of simultaneous conversation happening at the same time. And I'm wondering,
I can't believe she wore that dress.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how can sort of companies tap into that somehow? Because that's a very sort of social engagement, and I think there's nothing sort of being done with that.
We should just hire James Franco for all award shows at all times.
That'll solve it. The ABC thing was really good. I mean, I got a notice of like sign up for the ABC app, and I did my Oscar picks, and they had to be in by 5 o'clock that afternoon. And I had probably 50 friends that I was competing with on our Oscar picks. And we were chatting on the side about, I'm going to beat you. I ended up tying for first, so it was a good outcome. But I thought that was really good. I think the handicapping it, the chat room stuff that was going on was great. I think they did a really good job. But I got basically criticized walking into a party with 30 people with my iPad. Because I'm sitting there, they're watching it on a big screen, and I'm sitting with my iPad going, how am I doing so far? So again, I don't know if that behavior is the exception or that'll become the rule, the idea that you have to have that second screen experience going on all the time.
One example that we have in Quebec, if anybody's from Montreal, Star Academy is doing a really good job doing that kind of stuff right now. Star Academy, if you're not familiar with it, is a reality TV show. 10, 12 people basically get into a house. They teach them how to sing, teach them how to dance, stuff like that. At the end of the event, somebody comes out as winner. Every Sunday night, they have this big gala where they eliminate somebody. While the gala is on, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on the social networks with Facebook and stuff like that, but there's also behind-the-scene footage of stuff going on backstage, for example, in the artist green room, that kind of stuff. And Star Academy, whether it's because of that or not, is the most watched show on Sunday night in Quebec by a lot of people. It's millions of people are tuning in. There's 7 million people in Quebec, so there's basically 30, 40, 50% of the population tuning into this show. Wow. At any given time. It's huge.
Fantastic. So where we are currently, are the barriers to a better experience technological at this point, or are they more legal and contractual in terms of the assets that you need to provide the experience? In music, we got to the point that the technology wasn't the barrier anymore; it was the licensing.
I think for interactive TV or social TV, it's the creativity that's actually the thing that we need to maximize. So in the same way that we have creative, smart people creating the actual linear content, we also need creative, smart people to create these other experiences. And it's not just a platform or a technology that will magically solve that. I mean, same thing in advertising, right? When we have new forms and new ways of advertising, they don't just magically work and people get excited. You need a creative person to sit down and say, how do I maximize this opportunity? How do I make an experience that the user is excited about? So these examples that we see as successes tend to be driven by a really good idea. Someone says, this would be really fun to do while I watch the Oscars. So I think we need to see more
I know there are
doing
things
that.
we wanted to do. I work with the Grammy Tech Committee. There were things we wanted to do around the Grammys that we couldn't do because there were issues with CBS of, well, that distracts from our show. It's not additive, it's distractive again. So rights issues seem to cloud things sometimes.
I think that's an interesting point because I'm not versed enough to really understand the rights issues, but one of the things that we found in Watch Party, we talked to a dozen television networks after we'd launched our product, and almost all of them contacted us. Like, we didn't go out and say, hey, you know, ABC, we want to come talk to you, CNN. They called us and said, hey, this looks really cool. We want to talk about it. And what we discovered was that they all ultimately didn't want to use somebody else's product. They wanted to figure out how to build their own product so that they could control the experience, they could control the direction it went in, they could control the activities that happened around things like the Oscars or award shows. And we're looking for ideas, basically, to say, hey, that's a neat idea, let's build that into what we're building, and that looks cool, let's build that in.
And they want something, I guess, that's more bespoke and less off the shelf, because one solution doesn't work. For a client that we work with called Fans TV, which does something similar to, from what I know of your service is similar, it works really good for the CW in the US with Gossip Girl and Nikita and shows where there's a lot of chatter going on around the show. It wouldn't. There's other shows it just wouldn't work for.
That's definitely something we.
Some places they get the doors wide open, and other places they can't even get the door open to have the discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm just going to ask for on Xbox Live, to your point about the different experience in the tech. You have that separation between a live television broadcast and then my independent viewing of a video-on-demand content. And the one thing that we've pinned on is an example of like a Facebook Connect for something that you're watching on your own. So I'm engaged in a piece of content, I'm part of a social network, and I want to be able to then share. So what we're in our video app environment that we've just launched this past fall, that's certainly a feature we've been encouraging, and the majority of our partners have adopted, is the ability to say, hey, take that, that catalog content, allow your members to engage with it, but it's not about, you're not chatting necessarily at the same time because you're one-to-one with that piece of content, but the fact that you're enjoying it and you want to share it. Example, Vivo just launched a few weeks ago. And so what they've adopted within it, as you're going through artists, you're going through a particular piece of content, there's just share. You could actually use Connect, you could actually say Xbox. Voice command comes up, share. And it will automatically go to your Facebook to basically then immediately send through a post to your wall. Because I now want to share that moment, I'm enjoying that moment, it's an independent experience, and I'm not reaching out trying to find somebody, but then I'm leveraging that linchpin being in the example of Facebook to get at least others aware of what I'm enjoying.
Eric, what's some other, I mean, the Star Academy is a really great example. What are other successes that you see where social engagement is working?
Well, I think we talked about supporting events before. I think that it's tough to pick one specific example. Star Academy is one of them, but we're talking about context before, and a live concert.
Let's go the other way. What have you seen that that's really been a colossal mistake? What are some of the lessons? Don't do this.
I would agree that Facebook, in my mind, might not be the best implementation. Media Room, for example, some of the Canadian operators have a Media Room implementation. Facebook is on there. From what I've seen, I'm certainly not one that would use that application on it. To go back to licensing you were talking about before, just to close off on that comment, licensing is absolutely a consideration. We provide music services, and if you're familiar with the TV Everywhere concept, you would think that in this day and age, it's automatic to get the rights for multiple platforms, mobile, internet, and television. If you're a TV Everywhere subscriber, basically, you pay your cable bill, you can access the content on whatever platform you want. It's not automatic today to get these rights. In a lot of cases, there's incremental amounts that are requested by the content providers, the record labels, whatever it is, to be able to access the content on the additional platforms. So there are technological considerations, but in the case of music, absolutely, there are licensing considerations as well.
We had an issue again. I live in Los Angeles, so I've got a U.S. perspective on this. Hulu. I thought what was happening with social television, with the availability of television on demand, was really great until the Boxy situation, where Hulu was saying, if I hook Boxee up to my TV set and want to watch Hulu on my TV, then all of a sudden I've crossed a line because I could be watching it on a 30-inch computer monitor, but if I'm watching it on a 30-inch TV, then I violated some agreement somewhere, and they were actually sniffing that you were using Boxee on a TV and blocking it. Does that make it, I mean, again, Michael, you've been doing this a long time. Does that make any sense at all?
It doesn't make any sense to the consumer, no. I mean, it does make sense, as we've seen in the music industry, that many agreements are sort of older in nature and maybe don't reflect the way that content is used. Although I actually have way more hope for the video industry because they do, tend to bundle their rights much better than the music industry. I don't know if any of that is actually preventing us from doing social television, though. I mean, it's definitely making it more difficult for the consumer to sometimes get the content they want in the place they want it. But generally speaking, I think that consumers today have way more options and have the ability to watch way more content than they did in the past. So I don't think that's the thing that would be blocking us from creating a really amazing social experience. It's going to be something to deal with, but I don't think it's the thing that's stopping us today.
Well, one of the challenges, with someone like Boxee in terms of that relationship. Oh, sorry. Just a relationship with like Hulu in that example. Right. What is it that Boxee is doing to provide an environment that Hulu wants to participate in, aside from opening up a window into their website or something, or just auto streaming some videos? And so in those partnerships, what are you establishing that differentiates that content, that makes sense for that platform? Taking what is that 30-inch monitor experience and trying to bring it to the TV is a lot different than building an environment and experience that was conducive to that, television experience. And I think making sure you're delivering those differentiated experiences, and then that partner can leverage it to engage socially in all the key features that leverages that technology properly for the benefit ultimately of the partner.
You have a question? You're on. As we say, make love to the mic. Lean forward as much as you can.
Hi.
There you go.
I just wanted to know, in your opinion, why something like Get Glue became so popular when essentially you're just signing into a TV show that you're watching. Like, what made that so popular over something else?
Well, I definitely have thoughts on that.
Yeah, go ahead, take it.
I think, one of the things that Get Glue did, and this is the way Miso started out as well, is they really effectively used game mechanics to generate users. They gave people stuff, even if it wasn't physical stuff, for taking an action. And I think, it's been pretty widely accepted now that those types of game mechanics actually work for driving users. And because Get Glue wasn't specific to television and they were for all media, and they had some money behind them, they did good marketing, they got good user numbers. We had at Watch Party, a lot of people who would check into Get Glue but then have conversations on Watch Party. And they wanted to get the badges because the badges were there and they wanted badges. But they weren't using Get Glue to have conversations or to truly engage. They were using Get Glue to get badges. And I think ultimately that's the experience that we found people wanted, was to have a social experience. And they didn't consider Get Glue a social experience. They considered Get Glue a
recognition engine?
A check-in service. It was Foursquare for TV. They gave them some badge for doing something. And that's what the way the users that we talked to and saw thought of it. And that's the way they used it. And they got their badges, and then they came and had conversations on Watch Party.
We were talking earlier about discovery and curation, and Rovi's got a bunch of different tools that help you. There's no shortage of programming now as you look across what's available on demand, what's available through Netflix, what's available that you can DVR. What are some of the tools that you're looking at to manage the experience?
Yeah, so I think this is, again, parallels the music industry to a large extent. Once they're sort of the barriers to consuming content goes away, the number of choices the consumer has is gigantic. And so, at Rovi, we are big believers that it's a combination of humans, people that understand television and movie content really well. So we run, for example, the All Movie website and TV Guide. So we have like 350 editors who sit down and watch shows and write about it, plus algorithms, plus data. We run all these set-top boxes with guide programs, and so we actually see in real time what it is that everyone's watching. And so by combining all that curatorial power with some smart algorithms, we can do a lot of things with the television guide to help people find interesting content. I don't think that ever is going to obviate the need for real curation, things where people are actually writing up, this is a really interesting new show. That's a really important aspect of how we find out about content, but we can layer data on top of that to do a more personalized approach. We also run the website SideReel, and so SideReel is a place where people go to find where to consume content, and as part of that, there's a big area of discovery. How do I find what's new, what's hot, what's the thing that's the most exciting? And I mean, one use case that I think people often forget about is just the most basic, turn the television on, tell me what the most popular show is right now. Very easy, not overly complicated, really, really powerful. The consumers often respond and say, oh, that's awesome. These are the 3 top things being watched right now. I'll go check those out. Very easy feature, very, very good.
Is anybody really exploiting in a meaningful way the power of influencers? People that might be an expert in a certain genre of shows. I mean, are you using blogs, or are you using any of these tools to create recommendation tools?
We are. I mean, so we have our own editorial staff in-house, and then we all go off and spider things. I mean, things like Television Without Pity, I think, is a good example. Sort of a somewhat snarky, but well done.
We like snarky.
Well, that's the thing. I think people do respond to snark. I mean, we at Rovi tend to take a more neutral position just because our data goes out to so many different people. But we love people like Television Without Pity because they take an opinionated stance and give you a very in-depth review of what's going on TV. So I don't know if that's good for the average viewer, but for the specific people that are into that, it's a great site.
We found something really interesting happened after we launched Watch Party, which was that people who were, a bunch of people came in and they were all chatting about a particular show, that there were actually people within the chat room itself who would say, oh, if you guys like this show, have you checked out this show? You should check out this show, and we'll do a watch party for that tomorrow night. And they were successful at getting people to watch another television program and participate in the watch party for it. And we found ways to sort of reward those people and incentivize them to do that more. But we didn't have to do that. They were doing it on their own. And then other people who were participating in the communities would go ask them, what do you think about this show? Or have you checked out this show? And they were sort of generating their own community of influencers within the product.
One of the things we've been playing with one of our clients is which I think Rovi's playing with too, is actionable tagging. So I'm not just tagging, but it's actually then going to my DVR and saying, program this show. So it's a way, without having to go into the DVR menu and go to that day and whatever, it basically puts a pin in it. It's almost like Pinterest for television.
Yeah, and the metadata question is always looms large in general, right? So how do we uniquely identify these objects across multiple platforms?
Right.
That's always a big issue. There are several different ID standards. Rovi runs a bunch. But yeah, that's definitely always an issue, especially when we start mixing and matching. It's not just one content provider who is controlling the distribution, but you could have 3 or 4. You could be using Netflix on one place, Hulu in another place, your cable provider somewhere else. Going back to my Battlestar Galactica example, right. It's actually sort of difficult to watch that series entirely in order across multiple platforms without getting messed up and sort of either missing an episode or a webisode or some sort of strange made-for-TV movie. There's actually really difficult to line that up across multiple platforms.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, just back on the concept of social TV. Big Fish, Apple, has been moving towards the concept of social TV since the first generation of Apple TV. Now with the big buzz talk of iTV, or whatever they're going to call it, coming out, and them approaching networks to create specific television apps for the new iTV for people to subscribe or purchase just that content that they want, how is it that social TV is not going to be able to integrate things like Facebook well? If Apple heads that up, and who knows what Steve Jobs was talking to Mark Zuckerberg about before he passed away, but to be able to integrate apps like Facebook on a television and do it well with a company like Apple heading that, how is that not going to be successful?
I think technologically they can do anything they want to do. They do brilliant stuff. I think it's a closed network, first of all, whatever you end up doing, and some of the value propositions have been challenging. So, I mean, if you look at what's happened with apps, with magazines, so you have the Time Magazine app, and any subscription that's sold on an iPad, they want a 30% margin off the top. That could be tough if TV starts doing interesting things, but it passes through an Apple device, and all of a sudden there's a margin taken off the top of the advert. I'm being hypothetical, but you know, I had a conversation over lunch one day saying after listening to Apple's business model, I felt I owed Microsoft a check because I had written my business plan on Word, so they should be entitled to at least 30% of my business, because without Word, I wouldn't have been able to write the business plan. So I wanted to at least address the scenario. That experience is happening right now on Xbox Live. There's over 40 million members, or almost 40 million members on Xbox Live today. Launched with 50 partners this past fall, and building an environment, an app environment that we are working with broadcasters here in Canada. We've worked with Astral, with Disney XD, been working with Rogers in terms of an authenticated experience to their customers, and leveraging the social network that makes sense for our social network. Xbox Live is the largest social network on television today in terms of a connected experience with that volume of members. And to your point, it is critical that you do leverage the benefits of what you have in that social network, and we're trying to do that with Connect. We're doing that with what you're seeing now with Windows Phone and Windows 8 in terms of taking that experience. We have Xbox Companion, and how can you engage with the Xbox, again, as a bit of a sitting back personal experience, but leveraging in your tool chest and making sure the app environment that the operators and the broadcasters you're working with can leverage them effectively.
And I think if the question was, how can Apple fail at creating a social network, there's a one-word answer called ping.
Yes. Yeah. Ping. Would you have another question there?
Yeah.
You'll get the final question, and then we have to wrap it up.
Okay, thanks. I think it's worth noting that some of the stuff you've been talking about that's been most successful in terms of social TV has been interrogative, like the Oscars. Right? No one knows what's going to happen.
It's a water cooler. It's the water cooler event. It's how you create social around something has to be a live experience.
Right. And where you have less success is when you have drama or closed narrative, even in a comedy.
Agreed.
The broadcasters are missing from this discussion to me, because if they're not going to allow or have an aversion to other kinds of media in which audience members essentially can choose their own adventure, then we're not going to see that same kind of interactivity, I don't think. And I'm sorry that the folks from CRTC and the panel that was here yesterday isn't here to integrate with the panel today, because I think that that's a broader discussion that needs to be happening.
I think rights owners have gotten better about. I think the Star Trek experience with Paramount was very illustrative, as you would say, where Paramount tried to punish Star Trek fans for messing with their content. So if you put up pictures, they would tell you to take them down. I think everybody's learned from that it's good to have your fans support what you do, as opposed to try and punish them for, putting up their version of Star Trek. The Lucasfilm has been really good about letting the community mess with Star Wars assets, as long as they don't do it for any kind of profit.
I mean, looking at the MSO market, right, folks that provide cable-type programming or paid TV, I think there's going to be a feedback loop that's going to reinforce those more interactive forms of broadcast, just because that's where people are still paying for television, is for the experience of live sports, live TV, things that they can't get anywhere else. And that, over the next few years, the MSOs are going to have to figure out, is that my main business, and is this other stuff sort of ancillary, and will consumers get it somewhere else? Will I integrate Netflix and let someone subscribe to Netflix for that back catalog material and more focus on the live stuff? I mean, I think this is a larger issue than just social. It's going to drive a lot of the paid television market over the next 4, 5, 6 years.
The only word of caution I would say to that is that we have to keep in mind that people still watch television, in a lot of cases, in a lean-back experience.
Right.
Not everybody sits in front of a TV with a laptop. Not everybody has an iPad at home. So I completely agree with you. It's going to change how it works. But my parents-in-law, for example, are never going to be candidates for this kind of stuff. regular TV is always going to be around, at least for the foreseeable future. It's not going to go away. Yes, broadcasters have to be more creative. Content providers like us, because we do sell our services to TV operators as well, we also have to be more creative, and we also have to make sure that we give the customers what they want. But we always have to keep in mind who our customer is, and there are still a lot of customers out there who are not going to be participating in this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll add very quickly to that. That's one of the experiences we had talking to television networks, is there was a level of concern that if they did too much or put too much out there, they would alienate viewers who didn't have an iPad or didn't want to be online when they watched. And if they filled up too many offers or tweet about this and all this stuff, that some of their viewers and potentially a majority of their viewers would feel left out in a negative way. Not like, oh, I have to go get an iPad now so that I can watch my favorite show and tweet about it, but they just would feel like it's not for them anymore, and there's concern.
It's going to be challenging for broadcasters on just how do you build all these platforms and trying to go independently, and what's the revenue model that makes sense for this investment? So does it tend to now fall into, again, an aggregator environment? I'll be the aggregator, I'll have a common experience, I can offer that seamlessly across broader portfolio of content versus an independent broadcaster trying to do it alone.
And I think final thing for me, the biggest challenge I see is that I was talking to somebody from Pandora, and I said, do you maximize Pandora, the radio service, do you maximize it to the platform? And they said, no, we provide the lowest common denominator across the platforms. So whatever the best feature set that's offered, they basically scale it down so it works across everything in a homogeneous way. I think for television that's a mistake. I think it should, if Xbox does something really cool that a PS3 won't do, it should play to the best features, the best capabilities of the device. The platforms are critical. The interfaces, as you say, are critical. But it's just getting better and better. So I want to thank you all. Thanks the audience. We're going to get out of here. Thanks very much, everybody.